Pokemon Red and Green in Japan and the international versions Pokemon Red and Blue are basically the same game. They have the same story, the same 151 Pokemon, they use the exact same moves. So beating these games, even if you don't speak Japanese, isn't really a challenge. However, there is one reason why Pokemon Red and Green from Japan are actually very interesting for the international community: Blizzard. Because while Blizzard is already one of the strongest moves in the entire game, 120 base power, 90% accuracy, and a 10% chance to freeze your opponents, in the original Pokemon Red and Green, that chance was 30%. So you had a roughly 1 in 3 chance of freezing your opponent and causing them to not be able to do anything for the rest of the battle. And since there are only 2 opponents in the entire game that have healing items that can get rid of freeze, Brock and then the champion at the very end, this move could be so incredibly broken that even an incredibly weak Pokemon could beat the entire game in a solo challenge. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a Squirtle with the move Blizzard, and we're going to try to beat the entire game on minimum battles. Will this be possible, or will it be incredibly difficult? There's only one way to find out. So starting off our journey, of course, Professor Oak's going to meet us outside of Pallet Town. We have no idea what he's saying, but we're going to go into his laboratory and get our starting Pokemon. Just like that, we get Squirtle, also known as Zenigame in the Japanese, and this is going to be our starter because it's the only one that can learn Blizzard. So now we're going to simply give our Pokemon Blizzard, and this could be incredibly overpowered. Now, you can't maybe read these names, but just trust me that they're Tackle, Tail Whip, and then Blizzard at the very bottom with 5 PP, and we are running on 0 DVs with this Pokemon, so it's going to be the worst possible Squirtle. So with that, let's get into the Rival 1 fight and see how we actually do. So of course against Rival 1, there's only one plan: to use Blizzard, and let's see if we one-shot this Bulbasaur. No, it just barely survives with 1 HP, but we have frozen it, and that guarantees that we win the very first battle with no difficulty whatsoever. And it's this 30% chance to freeze that makes me think that this could end up being an incredibly easy challenge, even with a Pokemon like Squirtle that's ranked like 130th out of 151 Pokemon in terms of base stats. But we're gonna have to see. There will be a few challenges coming along the way. Now, of course, this is a solo challenge. We're not using items in battle, all the standard stuff. And if you watched the previous video, you probably noticed that I did that entire video in Japanese. The reason for that, April Fools, of course, but also because I've lived in Japan for 13 years as an American expat. So I thought it would be a funny way to play the game. Now we get to the end of Viridian Forest, where we've got a Weedle, also known as Bidoru in Japanese, and we're just gonna see how strong Blizzard is here. So Blizzard did about half, but then it was frozen, so now we can simply use Tackle and completely destroy that Pokemon. And just like that, we are ready to move on to Brock. Of course, his Pokemon are weak against Ice-type moves, so I think this is going to be incredibly overpowered, but let's see if we one-shot or not. So Brock, attempt number 1. He's got the Geodude, also known as Ishisubute, and we're going to use Blizzard. And it just went for a defense curl. Obviously, that's not going to affect Blizzard at all, but we only did about half damage here. We are 5 levels lower, so we're going to have to use Blizzard twice in order to knock this Pokemon out. We level up after that straight to level 9, meaning we don't get Bubble, but now let's see how we do against Onyx, or Iwaku, as it was known in Japanese. We do have 2 Blizzards in the bag, but we get a critical hit, allowing us to knock it out in a single Blizzard. So 9 minutes 49 seconds to get through that section, including me speaking very slowly in Japanese in the original audio of this video. But Brock really isn't an issue. Blizzard is completely overpowered. So let's move on to Misty, because she does of course resist ice type moves. She might pose a bigger challenge. But now as we go through, the most interesting thing to me is actually to look at some of these sprites, because they are very different than the red and blue sprites that we got in the West. Like, this Caterpie looks way cuter than Caterpie in the Western versions, just in my opinion. And the Metapod is, I guess, kind of cool. It's actually faced the right way. Zubat is a Pokemon that looks almost exactly the same. I mean, if you look on the top right, I'm using an overlay that includes Pokemon Black and White sprites. And looking at the Zubat, you can see that they're basically the same Pokemon. But now when we come up against the Geodude, it looks nothing like that sprite up there. Like, yes, I see that it's kind of got hands, but it doesn't even look like it's got eyes. It's positioned like completely weirdly, so we're just going to run away. Now, of course, in Mount Moon, we can get a couple of TMs. We're going to pick up TM number 1 and TM 12 so that we can go ahead and learn those moves. So we have added Mega Punch and Water Gun to our moveset. Now, moving on, we can see Clefairy, which is named Pee-Pee in Japanese. Oh my god, that is so hilarious. So we're gonna just run away from that because we're not gonna catch any Pokemon except to use for HMs. But still, the fact that PP was in the game, I think somebody told me that way back in the day, but I didn't believe them. Turns out that that's the actual name. Anyway, we are now going to fight the required rocket, where Blizzard is going to make very quick work of his Pokemon. I don't think they can really do anything against us. So let's make our way to the Super Nerd. And in Japanese, this guy is basically called Science Guy. Rika Kei no Otoko. So yeah, like guy who's into science. And of course, he sends out his Beta Beta, which is Grimer, and we're simply going to use Blizzard. It takes a couple hits to knock that Pokemon out. Now, Blizzard has actually been disabled, so we can't use it here on the Voltorb. We're just going to have to go for, I guess, Mega Punch to try to knock it out. Mega Punch does more than half. Of course, it has a chance to miss, but 2 Mega Punches gets the job done. Finally, we've got Dogas, the coughing, but we freeze it, meaning that we're simply going to win this fight no matter what we do from here. So we'll just use Water Gun to finish it off. And just like that, we easily get through this section. We are going to pick up the Dome fossil because we all know that Lord Dome is the correct fossil. And now we'll simply make our way out of Mount Moon. Now, of course, Misty could be a little bit hard. So instead of going and fighting her immediately, I'm going to go up north and fight against our rival. He leads off with a Pidgeotto, and that should be a good matchup for our Blizzard. So of course, we're just going to try Blizzard and see if we get the one shot. We do not. And it manages to hit us with a gust. It takes 2 more hits to knock it out after that. Fortunately, Aber comes out next, and this Pokemon can do nothing, so we can just spam Mega Punch in order to try to knock it out. Now, I honestly think this Aber sprite looks more like an alien than the Western sprites, but tell me in the comments if you agree. Now we can simply easily knock out the Rattata, and we've made it back to Bulbasaur, where we're simply going to use Blizzard. We do not get the one-hitter, and we don't get the freeze, but a single tackle after that knocks it out. So that was an incredibly easy fight. We still have no resets in this entire section. We've learned some TMs, but that's basically it. Blizzard is proving to be pretty darn good at this point, though. So we're just going to make our way up north because nothing here should be too terribly difficult. But then I come up against this Ekans, and that sprite is absolutely hilarious. Like, its mouth is just open wide, but it just looks silly. Like, it looks like a Bellsprout stuck on top of a snake. So I just knock it out with a single Blizzard, and we move on in the challenge. Also, I wanted to check the price of a bicycle in the Japanese versions just to see, and it turns out that they're 1 million yen. So Pokédollars do equal yen. And yen are about 150 yen to the US dollar. So that's effectively like $6,000 or $7,000 to buy a bicycle, which is utterly ridiculous. Now, I have caught myself a Bellsprout, and I have also gotten a Spearow to use as HM Pokemon. Of course, they will never be used in battle since this is a solo challenge. And now as we move on, we get to learn Bite, which is just another good move. It's called Kamitsuku in Japanese. It's basically enough to one-shot these weak Pokemon by the end. And we have made it to Billy Boy's house, and we also pick up a PP Aid. That's right, the name of Ether in the Japanese games is PP Aid, and I was laughing maniacally because, come on, like kids giving them PP Aids. Come on, guys, come on. Anyway, of course, Billy Boy's gonna go in the teleporter, and if he had a Pokemon that knew Blizzard, he would obviously never want to separate from it, but he clearly didn't, so we save him and he gives us a ticket. So with that, let's go ahead and make our way into Misty's gym, where first up we have to fight the junior trainer with her Goldeen. It wasn't a terribly hard battle, but we did take a decent amount of damage. Still, I'm just going to heal with a potion. Let's see if we can take Misty down. So first attempt against Misty, of course, I'm going to go for Blizzard here because I think we need the freeze. We get the freeze on the first Staryu. So now this is a free Pokemon. We can just spam Bite and easily knock this Pokemon out. Now Starmie's out next, and we're still going to stick with Blizzard trying to freeze it. We still had 4 Blizzards, but we didn't manage to get a freeze with any of them. And while we do know Bite, of course Gen 1, Bite is just a normal type move, so it's not super effective, and we don't quite do enough damage to get through that. Still, I think this is possible, so let's try it again. Round 2, we just go for Bite on the first Staryu and knock it out in 3 hits, and then we freeze the Starmie. So now it doesn't matter what we do, we can spam Mega Punch, we can spam Bite, it really doesn't matter, we have a guaranteed victory. So the fact that there's a 30% chance to freeze here is absolutely broken, and we are probably going to have an easy time getting through the whole game. So now let's take on the Innocent Bystander, where the only thing interesting here is the sprites. Like, that is not Machop. Like, it is Machop, but it really doesn't look like Machop to me. Maybe it's the green color, but I just don't see this Pokemon as the same. Still, we're simply going to knock this one out. I'm going to use some water guns. Of course, it is doing some really massive damage though, so we'll use Blizzard to knock it out quicker. And then we get this very strange looking Drowsy. Now, what I will say is that this Drowsy is actually better than the red and blue one, because the red and blue one looked like he had some evil intentions in mind. This one just looks kind of sleepy, so yeah, we knocked that one out pretty quickly and we're ready to move on in the game. I'm going to teach my Pokemon both Bubble Beam and Dig at this point, because I do think these moves are really useful. Of course, Dig will be good against Lieutenant Surge, and Bubble Beam is just better than having Water Gun. And with that, we're ready to move on down south and make our way to rival number 3. Now, we are on minimum battles, so we will not be getting Body Slam in this one, so we're just going to be going in with our moveset as it is. Still, I think Blizzard will be enough. Now, we actually end up having trouble against this last just before Vermilion City, and the entire issue is that she can lower accuracy. So while Blizzard is super effective, if she ever manages to land a sand attack on us, we actually can end up losing the fight just from misses. This fight ended up taking me 6 attempts to beat, in spite of the fact that I had a super effective move, just because I got so many misses in that fight. However, with that done, it's Rival 3 time, and I think we're going to completely crush him, but let's find out. Now, of course, Rival 3 leads off with his Pidgeotto, which is also known as Pigeon in Japanese, and we get a one-shot because we're so massively over-leveled at this point. Raticate, or Rata, comes out next, and we simply destroy it. Now we can actually go for Dig on the Kadabra. Kadabra is called Yungera in Japanese, based on Yoon Geller, the famous supposed psychic. Turns out he's not going to be psychic enough though, so I think we're going to simply destroy him. So we go for Dig. We just barely miss the one-hit KO as it survives with 1 HP. Still, we can just Bite to knock it out on the next turn. Finally, we've got this Ivysaur, Fushigi Soul, that looks like it's being crushed by the bulb on its back. Like, this Pokemon looks so unbalanced compared to what it is. Like, look in the top right and look at that and tell me that those are the same. Clearly not. Still, we're just going to go for the Blizzard and maybe get the one-hitter. It goes for Leech Seed on us, but we get the freeze, guaranteeing another win. So just like that, we have defeated Rival 3. Still no real difficulties outside of that Pidgey girl, and now we can get cut and make our way over to Lieutenant Surge. I'm going to try him once, even though he does have a type advantage on us, because who knows, maybe with Dig we can simply get an easy victory. So after digging through the trash for a small eternity, we do manage to get the doors to open, and maybe it's time for the trash man to simply prove that he can't beat a Squirtle. So first up, of course, he has Bidi Dama, or Voltorb, and we're simply going to go for Dig, also known as Ana o Horu in Japanese. So next out is Pikachu, and of course, it's a really cute looking sprite. I actually like this sprite maybe even a little better than the Pokemon Red and Blue sprite. I am a big fan of Fat Pikachu. Anyway, we get paralyzed by a Thunder Wave, and I could have gone for the glitch where I stay invincible, but I used Dig again because I don't want to just win cheaply, and we knocked that Pokemon out. Finally, we've got Raichu, and we're really hoping that he uses Thunder Shock. He has Smart AI, so he's only going to use his electric type moves, so the only possible chance that we have to survive here is to not get hit by Thunderbolt. Either he uses Thunder Shock or we need a Gen 1 miss. So I think this is a spot to go for Blizzard because he could go for the X speed. It doesn't work out. We get destroyed. And we try again and once again get destroyed. And I tested this even more off camera, and he still beat me even when he just used Thundershock. So I think hoping just for an item is too much. I'm going to move on in the game and go through the rock tunnel. Now, really, Erica and Lieutenant Surge are basically going to be the two hard challengers in this run, I think, until we get to the Elite Four. So for now, we'll take on the Wrapping Last, where Blizzard, given our huge level advantage, is just a bunch of one-hit KOs. Now, moving on into the rock tunnel, we get our first look at Harakara, or Cubone, and this sprite is really sad. Like, he looks really, really lonely, like the story, and it made me feel kind of bad knocking him out. After that, of course, we got Yadon, or Slowpoke, and this Pokemon turned out to be tough. I was actually having a lot of trouble knocking this one out and getting defeated over and over again. Basically, I ended up just saying, I guess I need a freeze to get it. However, in the final run, it disabled Blizzard, but it decided not to use Confusion and Headbutt against us. So we actually managed to win with a bunch of digs. So this run is getting a little more random, but we have made it to the infamous Rock Tunnel Hiker. He still self-destructs in this version, but we know Bubble Beam, so our type advantage, 4 times super effective Bubble Beam, is simply going to destroy all of his Pokemon. Now, I do like this Graveler sprite, except for the fact that it looks like it only has 2 arms. The other 2 arms are clearly not visible, but after knocking it out, we simply make our way out of the rock tunnel, and we find Meowth in the last trainer, and this one is super cute because it looks like a Maneki Neko. If you don't know what that is, in Japanese shops, they put these little cats to like try to entice you to spend money. And that's clearly what Meowth was meant to be. And then we go out and we find Sandshrew. This sprite, I mean, it looks like Sandshrew, but that's not Sandshrew. Come on. Then we get the Vulpix, which is really cute too, but it looks too much just like a Shiba Inu dog or something. Not quite what I'm used to with these Pokemon. So you guys should really tell me down below, do you think that these sprites were better in these original Pokemon Red and Green games? Or do you prefer the sprites we actually ended up getting in the West? So with that, we can make our way now into the Rocket Hideout. I did grab Ice Beam just in case I needed it, but I honestly don't think I do. And I've gotten some PP ups just to throw into Blizzard. We can get up to 8 PP in that move, and I think that's our best strategy for moving forward because we really just don't want to run out of PP in a seriously important fight. For now though, these rockets are all basically just a joke, so we can easily destroy them. Now we get our first look at Sandslash. And this is another Pokemon that honestly, I don't like this sprite. I think the Pokemon Yellow sprite is much, much better than this. Its eyes are just kind of a little bit too big, and it doesn't really look that menacing. Arbok, on the other hand, actually looks tough. Like, this is a really good version of the Arbok sprite. I kind of wish we had gotten it in the West. But with those 2 rockets guarding the doors done, we can move on now to Giovanni himself. And this was the point in the original run where I realized that the ether was called PP Aid. So I was laughing maniacally. And yeah, like PP Aid and PP Ada. Like, I think we can all agree that the Japanese naming scheme for items is just legendary. So with that, let's go ahead and fight against Giovanni, or Sekaki as he's named in Japanese. He leads off, of course, with Onyx. We can simply go Bubble Beam. There's no need to use Blizzard here. It's a one-hit KO. Rhyhorn basically looks like Western Rhyhorn to me. Like, not really all that much different. And we're simply going to get another easy victory with a Bubble Beam. Finally, we get the Kangaskhan. This one looks like the baby's really trying to fight us. Like, mama's chilling and the baby's ready to go. So we're simply going to use Blizzard. It only does about a third, so it's a 3-hit KO to knock that one out, but we do win on the first attempt. Now with that done, we're going to make our way over to the Pokemon Tower in Rival 4 because I think Erica's actually going to be pretty tough in this. Let's see if we can beat our rival. So of course he leads off with Pidgeotto and he sand attacks us turn 1, which is terrible because that means Blizzard now basically doesn't hit anymore and we run out of PP, so we're just losing the first attempt. However, if we can get better luck, we should be able to get through this. For example, if he goes Gust, we just get a one-hitter with Blizzard. Out next is Gyarados, which is just as tough in this version with Dragon Rage and Hydro Pump, so I think we need to go for Blizzard and try to freeze it. Still, a Dragon Rage takes us to low HP. Once this one is frozen though, we can really do anything that we want. We have learned withdraw over bite at this point because it's a badge boosting move, but we knock it out with a bunch of bubble beams. Out next is the Growlithe. We knock it out with a single bubble beam. We now have to deal with this Kadabra where of course we can simply dig on this Pokemon to knock it out. And finally we've got the Ivysaur, but it's still under leveled relative to us. We just needed to hit the Blizzard, but we missed and it knocked us out with a Vine Whip. Still, this fight is clearly winnable. We might just need to affect where we actually use our withdraws. So after freezing the Gyarados, I'm going to set up my withdraws here, and then we can destroy that Kadabra. We level up right on the Ivysaur though, so badge boosts are gone. Now we just need to land Blizzard. We survive against a Vine Whip, then it goes Leech Seed, and we just barely miss knocking that one out, so we lose another attempt. So this rival is turning out to actually be really hard. In spite of the fact that we are at a higher level than all of his Pokemon, we just keep getting hit by Dragon Rage, and we have to get luck in order to knock out the final Ivysaur. We finally get it with a critical hit, but man, that took tons of attempts to get through that. We are adding resets at this point, in spite of the fact that Blizzard is a really OP move. And the real thing that's starting to happen is we're just starting to see that we don't have enough speed. The lack of speed with Squirtle is causing it to not be able to outspeed its opponents and knock them out, especially that Ivysaur, and that makes me worried about the Victory Bell and Venusaurs that are coming up as well. Now we get to Ghastly. Ghastly looks just a little less whole in this, I guess, but still we can easily defeat it. Now this is actually a really good Haunter sprite, though I do think the Pokemon Red and Blue Haunter sprite was also pretty awesome, but we're not going to deal with this Pokemon. We simply run away, and we're just using Dig on all of the ghosts. So with that, we can easily make our way to the top of the tower, and of course we got Ghosty Mama. She doesn't look nearly as menacing here. Like in Pokemon Red and Blue, she's like lunging at you, ready to like hit you over the head with her bone. Here she's just kind of like holding it up like a baton. So we're just going to use Bubble Beam here, and it's an easy 2-hit KO to knock out this Pokemon. And with that, we can fight the Rockets at the top, and it's time to save Mr. Fuji. And of course, he gives us a little flute for our troubles because, you know, that's what old guys in Japan do. They just give you things you don't need. And with that, we have to decide where to go. We could try Erica, but we could also try going down to Koga one time. There are a few rando trainers in his gym, but first up, we do need a bicycle, and we also want to use Fly outside of battle. So I'm actually going to go and fight against Lieutenant Surge. Let's try him round 2. So here we're now a little bit faster, and we one-shot there against the Voltorb, and we are just faster than the Pikachu, so we can actually knock this one out without getting paralyzed or damaged. And that brings us to Raichu, where we're still probably hoping for a freeze, but we managed to survive Thundershock, and we just barely missed knocking it out on the first attempt. That makes me think we can do it if we just get a freeze, which we get in the next attempt. And now this is a guaranteed victory. So turns out that we just needed to be level 35 in order to beat Lieutenant Surge. Now we can get our bicycle and make our way down to Koga. Now, one thing to note here is that there is typically a rare candy hidden on the cycling road, at least in the Western versions. However, when I was searching the same spot, I couldn't find that item. So maybe it's been moved in this version of the game. I'm not sure, but we're down 1 rare candy compared to my normal minimum battles runs. But with that, we will make our way to the Safari Zone, where of course we want to get access to Surf. That's a super important move, and we can see some more Pokemon sprites. That's actually a much better execute sprite than in Pokemon Red and Blue. Doduo is called Dodo in Japanese, which I thought was hilarious. And Paris is a little bit weird looking. I mean, it's still Paris, but it just looks kind of weird. However, we are able to get to the end and get access to Hidden Machine 3 in order to learn Surf. We're going to learn that right away on our Squirtle. With that, we can make our way out of here. However, I tried the rando trainers inside of Koga's gym several times, and they were actually really hard. I couldn't actually beat the first gym trainer, so let's go try Erica one time. So against Erica, we are slower than the Victory Bell. So we are going to need it to miss a Sleep Powder and to freeze this Pokemon. Of course, we get put to sleep on the first attempt, and that's basically game over. as a single Razor Leaf, which is basically guaranteed critical hit, knocks us out in one go. A few attempts later, we actually do get the mist that we needed though, and freeze the Victory Bell. So now we can basically do anything. I decided to use a bunch of withdrawals in order to get badge boosts in my attack stat. And now we can even go dig since it's neutrally effective in order to knock this Pokemon out. I just want to keep my blizzards for later on. Out next, we've got Tangela, and that is the worst Tangela sprite I've ever seen. But still, we're just gonna go for Blizzard, and we almost get the one hitter. It turns out to be a two hitter, but really we can just do anything there. I use Surf to knock it out, and we are faster than the final Vileplume. If we just freeze it, we've got a guaranteed win, but we miss, and then it puts us to sleep, and Petal Dance is too much. Now, that was an incredibly lucky run. Like, you do not get that level of luck very often. I tried it several more times, but it just did not work. We couldn't even get past Victory Bell. So instead, let's go to Silphco and see if we can manage to beat the rival. I'm honestly not sure, but at least his first Pokemon, Pidgeot, is weak against Blizzard, so maybe we have a shot here. Now, we do have 4 rare candies in the bag that we haven't used. That might be our next step if we can't win this fight. Now, we do manage to get through Pidgeot just fine with Blizzard, but now we have to freeze this Gyarados, otherwise it does way too much damage and we simply lose. The next attempt, we do manage to freeze it though, and now it's just a question of where to use our badge boosts. Here, I'm just going to knock this Pokemon out with Surf, and then same on the Growlithe. We actually don't one-shot with Surf though, so we're on low health going to the Alakazam, or Houdin as it's called in Japanese, and a single Psybeam knocks us out. So it's pretty clear that we would need to set up there on that Growlithe if we're going to have any shot of winning this fight, but it's clearly not easy. So let's go back to the gym and just see if we can manage to beat these rando trainers in Fuchsia or not. So it took me 7 attempts to finally beat the first juggler, and of course I was trying to freeze his Pokemon, and it turns out that the next juggler also isn't easy. While he is just using a Drowsy and a Hypno, and by the way, that Hypno sprite is like the worst thing that I've ever seen in my life. But if you don't get a freeze here, you lose this fight because they just do way too much damage. Still, a few attempts later, we managed to freeze both Drowsy and Hypno, and with that, we now have a guaranteed win. He can swap Pokemon as much as he wants, it doesn't matter. We knock him out, and it's time to take on Koga. Now, of course, Koga leads off with his coughing, and really, Dig is our best move, but it does less than half here, so it's pretty clear we need to set up some badge boosts. Still, I knock it out on the first attempt. We move on to the Muck, and we simply get destroyed. However, if we can manage to get a freeze and then set up our badge boosts as we do on the next attempt, well, Withdraw is already making us stronger against his physical moves, and the badge boost glitch is boosting our Dig. So now when we get back to Muck, we use Dig, of course, and we do over half. So while it does use Minimize, we knock it out into Digs, and we've made it to the next coughing, which Dig is not a one-hit KO. It's actually a two-hitter, but we get our first shot at the Wheezing, or Mata Dogas. Mata means just again. So there are 2 of these coughings now. And of course, we lose the first attempt, but the next attempt, we're right back to the Wheezing, and then it self-destructs while we're underground, giving us the free victory. So it turns out that same as in Pokemon Red and Blue, Dig is the solution for Koga. It makes his final Pokemon super easy. But with that, we are now a little bit faster thanks to the badge boost that we just got. And now we have a question of which gym to go to. I'm actually going to go down to Cinnabar Island to fight Blaine. Now down there we see a Ponyta for the first time as well as Magmar, but I realized that Magmar's name is Booba in Japanese, or Boober. And yeah, he definitely looks like a boober to me. Still, after getting the secret key, we can make our way into the gym, and I was really interested to check if the quiz is the same or not. As long as it is, I can get through nice and easy, and it turns out all the answers are the same, but I wanted to check the final question, because TM28 is Shinu Shinu Kosen in Japanese, or Death Attack. And yeah, I think that's the proper name for Tombstoner. Obviously, if we knew Shinu Shinu Kosen, we would easily win this battle, but let's see if we can actually manage to beat Blaine at our current level. So he leads off with the Growlithe. Of course, we're simply going to use Surf. It does a little over half, but it's a 2-hit KO. On the Ponyta, it's more the same. Even after he Super Potions, though, we do get a 2-hitter there, meaning we have made it to the Rapidash, or Gallop, as it's called in Japanese. And we're just going to stick with the Surf here. I think this is the best strategy. We're just hoping not to get stomped and flinched here. Fortunately, it goes for like growls, so we get to the Arcanine on full health. Arcanine is called Windy in Japanese, so it makes me think that maybe this Pokemon is a flying type. Anyway, we're still going to simply use Surf. We do decent damage here, so it's just a matter of not wanting to get hit by Takedown too many times. If he goes Roar, we will win. We almost get him down, so I think this is a winnable fight. We're just going to have to try it a few more times. Once again, we managed to get to the Arcanine, but a single critical hit takedown just knocks us out. Obviously, even with badge boosts from withdrawal, we couldn't do anything there. However, this time we managed to get there on a little bit better health with some of our withdrawals used, and now we just have to see if we can deal enough damage. Now, I checked to see what kind of damage Dig would do, but Surf is the stronger move still here, and we actually managed to knock him out. So with that, we have beaten Blaine, gained a couple levels, but also we have gotten access to a badge boost in Special, which of course benefits both Surf and Blizzard, so maybe now Erica is actually possible. So now we are just faster than the Victory Bell by 1 point in speed, so we can go for Blizzard, and it's not a one-hit KO, but we do get the freeze, allowing us to much more easily beat this Pokemon. I'm still going to use some of my withdrawals in order to get badge boosts here, and then we knock that Pokemon out. Unfortunately, we leveled up right here on the Tangela, but we knock it out easily with Blizzard, and with that, we have made it to the Vileplume. We go Blizzard. We don't get the one-hitter, but we do get the freeze, guaranteeing another easy victory. So we come back to Erica with a special badge boost and just enough speed for that Victory Bell, and she's actually a pretty easy fight. Now, however, we've only got Sabrina and Giovanni left, and of course rival number 5, so let's get back there and see if we can manage to beat him. So now against rival 5, we're obviously still slower than his team, but we managed to freeze the very first Pidgeot, and now we can start setting up a couple of badge boosts right here and then knock this Pokemon out. Now, of course, on the Gyarados, we need to freeze this Pokemon still because we don't have that much HP. We still don't want to get hit by Dragon Rage. Fortunately, we freeze it, and we're going to get an easy victory on that Pokemon. We level up right before the Growlithe, however, meaning all of our badge boosts are gone, so we are going to be outsped from here on out. We are still faster than the Growlithe, however, so we can simply go Surf, and this should be an easy KO. Now, I go for Blizzard on the Alakazam to freeze it, and then we can simply dig it down. Finally, we've got Venusaur, and it is faster than us by 20 points, so we clearly need a lot of badge boosts here. We were hoping that it might use Leech Seed, but it just simply knocked us out. Still, I think this is possible. I think we just have to manipulate our badge boosts in order to get through. So we basically just get through the first 2 Pokemon without setting up any of our withdrawals. Unfortunately, we're on very low health because we couldn't get the freeze until the very end on that Gyarados. So once we get to Alakazam, we simply get destroyed. However, a couple attempts later, we do manage to freeze Alakazam, again on low health, but we can set up our badge boosts here, and now we will outspeed everything. We have 106 speed. Once we get to the Venusaur, we're hoping to either one-hit KO it or get the freeze. We use Blizzard. It is not a one-hitter, but he goes for Leech Seed, and with that, we can simply dig, and he can't stop us from knocking him out. So we had a really close fight there. It definitely is not consistent by any means, but it is possible to win that fight with just a Squirtle using Blizzard. And this is actually like the first part of the game where Blizzard is like legitimately available, so you could actually use this strategy in order to get through that fight. But with that done, it is time to move on to Giovanni number 2. Now, in the next battle, we level up and we could learn Hydro Pump, but I'm going to skip that move since we've already got Surf. And that brings us to Giovanni. Now, of course, Dig is going to be a super effective move here. We could also set up some withdrawals. I'm not sure if we need them or not. So I will go for Blizzard here on this Kangaskhan. We don't get a freeze. Against Rhyhorn, there's nothing to do other than Surf. Then we make it to Nidoqueen, and this is the worst sprite in Generation 1, in my personal opinion. That does not look scary. However, we don't manage to knock it out with a Blizzard and quickly get knocked out by a counter attack. So we're going to have to hope for a little bit better luck or better HP when we get to that final Pokemon. I started going for the freeze here, just hoping that I could set up some badge boosts. But in the end, we just knock out all of these Pokemon as we make it back to the Nidoqueen. But of course, if he just uses Tail Whip, we win. Just like that, we did manage to beat Giovanni. Yet again, though, that was a really close run battle and not something we're used to in that Giovanni 2 fight. But with that, we have no choice. We're on minimum battles, so we have to go and fight Sabrina. And I think we're going to need some crazy freeze luck in order to get through this one because our special just isn't that good. So Sabrina leads off, of course, with Kadabra, and we're going to try to use Blizzard to freeze this Pokemon. We actually do get the freeze, but we took massive damage, and we're still 3,800 XP away from a level up. So I debated whether or not I should use my badge boosts here, but I'm just going to use them so that we outspeed the rest of the way and hope that we don't level up before Alakazam. Now we can go for Dig and just one-shot that Pokemon. Out next is, of course, the Mr. Mime. It goes for Barrier, so I switch into Surf in order to knock it out. Now we get to Morphon or Venomoth, which I think just kind of looks silly here, but hey, this is a flying type Pokemon, so we know that it is weak against Blizzard. I'm just going to use this move. Turns out to be a 3-hitter, but then we dig and knock it out. So perfectly fine. Now we've made it to the final Alakazam. We're just hoping to get Recover, Reflect. Basically, even Psywave is probably not that bad. We just don't want Psybeam here, and we should be able to win. We just barely miss the range to knock it out, and it goes for a Reflect and a Recover, and then Psywave knocks us out. So we have to try this whole thing again, but the strategy is basically the same. The next time we do manage to freeze the Alakazam though, and that gives us the guaranteed victory. So we are at level 44 now as we're ready to move on to Giovanni. We still have all the rare candies in the bag, but we are down 1 relative to my normal route. Still, there's nothing super challenging in this gym before the gym leader, so let's just see if we can take Giovanni down. Now against Giovanni, I think the first thing to do is honestly to set up our badge boosts, because we want more defense here. All of his moves are basically physical in this version of the game. In Pokemon Yellow, he does use Thunder with the 2 Nidos, but here he's just going to use moves like Stomp and Fury Attack. So after setting up all 6 of our withdrawals, we just one-shot the Rhyhorn. Now against Doug Trio, I think that's a really silly looking sprite, but it's nice. And we one-shot it. We get another just terrible looking Nidoqueen. Still, we can just go for the Surf. It's a 2-hit KO to knock this one out, but with our high defense, we survive nice and easy. Next is Nidoking. I also think this Nidoking sprite is kind of terrible, but we one-shot it. And then Rhydon, by far and away the worst Gen 1 sprite in the Pokemon Red and Green games, in my personal opinion. Like, what is that? Of course, Surf just one-shots that Pokemon, and we easily win the battle. But yeah, the sprites seem to be getting worse as we go on in the game. And I'm kind of interested to see if we have any crazy ones when we get to the league. Still, first we have to fight our rival number 6. So let's get into this fight. Now, of course, he leads off with the Giga Chad Pidgeot. And I think the only thing to do here, of course, is to set up some blizzards. Now we're 4,000 XP away from a level up, but I think we will get there before the Venusaur. So I'm just going to go for the blizzard to try to knock this Pokemon out. Takes a few hits, but we do take it down. Out next, we've got the Rhyhorn, which is obviously an easy one-hitter with Surf. Next is Gyarados, though, and here we have to get that freeze because it's still using Dragon Rage and we don't have enough HP. We simply go down. Now, the next attempt, we do get back to Gyarados and freeze it this time, and I'm just going to use Surf in order to finish knocking it out. We level up right here before the Growlithe, and of course, we could try to freeze Growlithe. There's nothing stopping us. We could also try to set up our badge boost here. In this one, I tried to set up because of the fact that it can only use Leer and Takedown. Unfortunately, Takedown managed to knock me out. The next attempt, we are back to that Pokemon, and we set up a couple of our withdrawals, and we get much better luck getting to the Alakazam on green health. So here we can simply dig. We are already faster than this Pokemon, so we easily take it down. And Venusaur obviously is going to be slower than the Alakazam. Blizzard still is not a one-hitter, but we get the freeze. allowing us to get another easy victory. Still 7 attempts to get to that point, but we were able to beat Rival 6 with our Squirtle. Now it's worth noting I did a minimum battles run with Squirtle back in the day, but in that one I ended up using a double badge boost glitch strat between double team and withdraw in order to actually beat the game at the end, because it turned out that Squirtle was just a little too weak. Even with Blizzard and Hydro Pump, it wasn't doing enough damage. Granted, that was well over a couple years ago now, so if I went back and did that run today, I might actually be fine. Might be something to test out again in Pokemon Red and Blue. For now though, let's get to the league, starting with Kana, or Lorelei, and see if we can beat her and her water and ice type Pokemon. She is the only trainer that we can't freeze all of her Pokemon in this version of the game, so this could actually be tough. So she leads off with Dugong, of course, which is a very nice looking sprite here in Pokemon Green. I'm going to deal a little bit of damage, just hoping that it rests so that I can set up all of my badge boosts. We set up all of the withdrawals still on good HP, but we're doing barely anything here, and we don't really have a better move than just using Surf, since Dig will just take multiple turns and let it go to sleep. We managed to get the Cloyster though, or Parushane as it's called in Japanese. We're simply not doing enough damage with Surf. Like, this is a easily 6 or 7 hit KO here. Dig doesn't do that much either, so I think it's time to use some rare candies. So I'm going to try one time at level 50 to see if we can manage to get through. We get back to the Cloyster, of course, and the only good move to use here, because our attack stat has been lowered so much, is of course Surf. We are doing much better damage here though, so we do knock it out. We make it to the Slowbro, which honestly, this is much better than the Pokemon Red and Blue sprite, and we managed to knock it out with some Blizzards. That's the only Pokemon we really want to use Blizzard on. Now, I was going for Dig against this Jinx, but our attack stat is so low, we're much better off just using Surf to knock it out, and we make our first attempt at Lapras. Now, against Lapras, again, I think the only thing to do, given our low attack stat, is to use Surf, but we simply get knocked out by a Body Slam. So I'm going to level up a little bit more here. We get to level 53 this time. The whole issue in that last fight was that we leveled up right on Lapras, but at level 53, we don't level up here, meaning we've kept all of our badge boosts. Now we can go for Surf, and it's still looking like a 6-hit KO. When she gets a critical hit Body Slam, even with all the defense buffs, there's nothing we can do, because in Gen 1, critical hits ignore defense buffs. So we actually end up going all the way up to level 56 here, 3 more levels. That leaves only 1 rare candy in the bag, but now we're doing decent damage here against this Lapras. We did about a quarter, then it critical hit us, but if we can just manage to land 4 hits here, I think we can manage to get the victory. The next attempt number 14, we finally get the luck to get through. So we had to get a bunch of levels with our rare candies, but we were in the end able to beat Lorelei. She's maybe the toughest opponent though. Certainly the next opponent, Bruno, is nothing to worry about, so let's just take him down. So of course he leads off with the Onix. I'm just going to use this opportunity to set up all the badge boosts to make sure I outspeed. We one-shot that Pokemon. The terrible sprite of Hitmonchan comes out next. And yeah, we're just going to go ahead and use Surf here. And that's an easy one-hit KO. The Hitmonlee sprite, much better. I like this one. Not quite as good as the Red and Blue one, but still a good sprite overall. Still, it just goes down to a single Surf. The Onix is another one-hit KO, and now we've got the Machamp, which that has got to be the worst. That and Rhydon must be the worst sprites in this generation outside of Mew. So we're just going to go for the Surf. Obviously, this Pokemon can do nothing, and we knock it out in 2 hits. So Bruno, turns out that even in Japan, he was completely trash. But that now brings us to Agatha, who could be scary, so let's see if we can beat her. So of course she leads off with the worst looking Gengar sprite in history. But we're going to go ahead and try to set up Dig here. We're pretty close to a level up, so we want to maybe level up and then set up our badge boost. Sure enough, we knock it out. We get to level 58 as the Golbat comes out. We're going to go for Blizzard here, either to knock this Pokemon out or to get the freeze. we knock it out in 2 hits. That brings us now to the Haunter. And because we just leveled up, we're very far from a level up now. So if we get the freeze, we'll set up the badge boost on this Pokemon. Of course, we're not doing that much damage and we knock ourselves out. The next attempt, we managed to knock out the Golbat because she swapped, however, and freeze the first Gengar. And that allows us to set up all of the badge boosts on this Pokemon. Now we can simply go for Blizzard in order to freeze the Haunter when she swaps. And with all of the badge boosts set up, now we just simply go for Dig to knock that Pokemon out. We're faster than the Gengar and knock that out. Arbok can do nothing, but she actually even switches to the final Gengar, allowing us to get the easy KO there. And Arbok can do nothing. We simply knock it out with the Dig. So we end up beating Agatha in only 2 attempts, in spite of the fact that we're only using a little Squirtle. But now we have to take on Lance. Clearly, this should be an easy fight because we've got Blizzard, which is super effective here. So we're going to use the PP Max in order to get all of our PP back. And let's just see if we can manage to win. So first up, of course, is Gyarados. We actually can survive the Hyper Beam, but with a critical hit, it's just going to be a 1-hit KO. So we're really hoping for Leer here from this Pokemon because we are always going to be slower. We need to get a freeze on this Pokemon, I think, in order to win. So we do manage to get it frozen on the 7th attempt, and now we can set up all of the badge boosts and then just knock it out with a bunch of Surfs. We want to keep these Blizzards for the Dragons. Now on the first Dragonair, we leveled up. So we are no longer faster and we are not getting any badge boosts. So it takes 2 hits to knock that Pokemon out. We go Dig and then Blizzard to knock out the second Dragonair. Now I think we have to go Surf on the Aerodactyl since we have so few Blizzards, but we get knocked out, of course, by a critical hit. Now that we know that we're going to level up after the Gyarados, though, I'm just going to freeze it and knock it out. And now I'm going to try to freeze the first Dragonair. I get the freeze. Now we can set up our badge boost on this Pokemon and knock it out in 2. We just missed the range to knock out the second Dragonair, though, and we go down. So this is turning out to be an insanely difficult fight. In spite of the fact that we have super effective moves, it all depends on getting a freeze on the Dragonair in order to actually get this one to go. And we've only got the one rare candy left in the bag. I think we need that one before the final champion. So I think there's nothing to do but simply grind this battle out. Now this time, attempt number 18, we do manage to freeze that Dragonair and set up our badge boost. Now a single Blizzard is enough to knock out the next Dragonair, and we get a critical hit from the Aerodactyl knocking us out. Still, we managed to get back to Aerodactyl a few attempts later, and we knock it out with a single Surf, and then we see Dragonite for the first time. This is actually the best looking Dragonite sprite in Gen 1 in my opinion. It actually looks pretty tough and like an actual dragon, something that wasn't the case in Pokemon Red and Blue or Pokemon Yellow in my opinion. So now I can see why they thought it was a dragon type. Anyway, we're going to simply go for Blizzard here. We misclick, but then he just uses Barrier, giving us the chance to actually correct our mistake, and one Blizzard does the job. So Lancey Boy goes down after 20 attempts there. Clearly that was not a very good fight, but we have made it to the champion now. It's worth noting that my resets and timer got messed up midway through the run, so those numbers are not actually correct. We probably have at least a good 50 more resets than this, plus quite a few more TMs, so this is definitely not that good of a run. Still, we've made it to the champion, so let's see if we can beat him. First up, on the Pidgeot, we freeze it with a Blizzard, allowing us to now set up a bunch of badge boosts, and we're simply going to knock that Pokemon out. Next, of course, we've got the Alakazam. We go for Dig. It turns out to be a 2-hit KO there. And here on the Rhydon, we just get a 1-hitter with the Surf. As we go into the Gyarados, we still freeze it and knock it out. Arcanine, of course, we can just go for Surf and get a 1-hitter, but we level up right here before the Venusaur, meaning that we have no badge boosts on this Pokemon. And at this point, we just have to hope that we can manage to win, but we get the freeze after surviving a hit, meaning we get the victory on the first attempt against the champion. So just like that, a single Squirtle was able to beat the entire game of Pokemon Green using Blizzard. And yeah, it was kind of overpowered. Honestly, like, yes, we had a lot of random spots where we lost, but most of the time I was just trying to find a way to get the freeze on the opponent. And when we did, it was actually a pretty easy victory to get through. So I don't know, that was a lot of fun. Honestly, you guys should tell me, should we do more runs in this Japanese version of the game? There are obviously tons of other things like glitches that were taken out of the Western versions to still explore here, so could be an interesting challenge. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me give a massive thank you to all of the channel members, and a thank you to you guys for being good sports as we did a April Fools with this video. Now, of course, in English, you all should be able to understand it, and hopefully you guys had as much fun with this as I did. Anyway, I appreciate all you for watching. I will see you in the next one. Later.